Now, people do all sorts of crazy things when they're desperate, but what happened in this case was really tragic and brutal. This is the sad story of the girl who was murdered for having male sex organs, and the person who killed her was someone she never would have imagined.
If there is anything in this world that I could take back, it would be that I would give Mercedes her life back.
Let's get started. Mercedes Williamson was described as a happy teen who had big dreams of becoming a celebrity hairstylist. She loved everything about beauty and thought that she could do a better job at making celebrities look even more beautiful. She was confident, strong-headed, and she knew what she wanted. She never let anyone, even her parents, dictate how she should live her life. And for that reason, she fell out with multiple times, until one day she just dropped out of high school, packed a bag, and left home. She went to live at a friend's house in Theodore, Alabama, which is where she met and fell in love with 27-year-old Joshua Brandon Vallum, or Josh for short. The two started dating and seemed to be really happy together. According to people who knew them, Josh seemed like a super nice guy and was really affectionate towards Mercedes. He would take her out dancing or go to the movies and generally be a really good boyfriend. They then went out for 8 months, but suddenly broke up. For several months, they each seemed to move on with their lives without each other, until May 30th, 2015. Mercedes was walking down a parkway near her home in Alabama when Josh suddenly showed up. They'd not seen or talked to each other for months, so Mercedes was a bit surprised to see him. Josh pulled over and rolled down his car window and asked Mercedes if she had any plans for the evening, and she said no. And he was like, well, now you got plans, get in. And Mercedes got inside the car. That was the last time anyone would ever see her alive again. 2 days later, on June 2nd, the George County, Mississippi Sheriff's Office received a strange call from a distressed man who told them that he believed his son had killed someone and buried the body on his property. The officers immediately rushed to the scene and found the decomposing remains of what seemed like a teenage girl. She was lying face down on the ground with her body partially covered with vegetation and soil. Her face was so badly damaged that authorities had to use another method to identify her, and when the reports came back, they showed that the remains belonged to a 17-year-old boy by the name of Michael Wilkins, who adopted the name of Mercedes Williamson. From an early age, Mercedes did not identify as a boy. She liked to play with dolls instead of trucks and just knew that she was a girl. As you can already guess, that did not go well with some family members, most especially her dad, who refused to accept this transition and even went as far as disowning her. I think this is probably why Mercedes left home. However, Mercedes did have some allies who stood by her and supported her decision, and one of them was her Aunt Kathy.
Do you feel comfortable? He said, I feel happy. I said, that's all I want to hear.
So now I know you're probably wondering, did Josh know about this? I mean, they were together for 8 months. Now, that's where the story is. So after this revelation, Josh became the obvious suspect, and his dad actually turned him into the police. And as he was being interrogated, he claimed that he had no idea that Mercedes was transgender.
You know, grew to like the person a lot. I didn't know that wasn't the person I thought it was.
He claimed that the two hung out for 3 to 4 times a week, but never really got intimate, saying that Mercedes would push him away whenever things got too intense, and that he thought she just wanted to take things slow. He told the police that Mercedes broke up with him before they got to that stage in their relationship. On that fateful day, Josh said he drove over to Mercedes and told her that he wanted to be intimate with her, and she agreed, which really does not make sense to me since, in his own words, Mercedes had been holding out, so why would she suddenly change her mind? Josh said that he took Mercedes to his dad's place in Mississippi, which was actually an isolated wooded area, and that they started fooling around.
We get there and I drive to the back of the field. We go to kissing, you know.
He claimed that he felt something that, and I quote, was not supposed to be there. He completely lost it and blacked out. When he came to, he was standing over Mercedes with a hammer in his hand.
And I panicked. All that was going through my head at the time was, what the
Josh claimed that he then rushed back to his car where he found the passenger door open and blood all over the interior.
I don't believe you. I couldn't find my knife. I know I used a taser. because it was laying in my floorboard.
But even in his state of shock, Josh went ahead and tried to cover up the crime. He burned his clothes and threw away the taser, knife, and hammer over a bridge, and then tried to hide Mercedes' lifeless body with leaves and soil. However, when he went home, he still had blood on his shoulders, and his brother saw it and was like, "What the heck happened?" Josh replied, "Well, it was my life or his," and then made him promise not to tell anyone. But the brother later told their dad, who then called the police.
I didn't hate that person, though. I like that person. That is the way it turned out.
So Josh was trying to convince the detectives that this was a crime of passion, which would have gotten him a far lesser prison sentence. But was this really the truth? Was this how things happened? Well, not in the least bit. According to Mercedes' roommate, Jeannie Miller, Josh knew that Mercedes was transgender, and the two actually used to spend several nights a week together. They had slept together many times and would hang out around the house in their undergarments. They even called each other baby and acted all lovey-dovey towards each other. But what's even more interesting, investigators found lots of explicit pictures of men on Josh's mobile phone. So clearly Josh was into guys and could not have taken Mercedes' life for the reasons he claimed. So why then did he do it and then lie about his relationship?
I want to know why you took her. Why? What did she do to you that so... She didn't do nothing to you to deserve that.
During his interrogation, Josh revealed that he was affiliated with a street gang called the Latin Kings, and they had laws that should not be broken. Investigators found that one of those laws was that gang members were forbidden from having homosexual relationships, and the punishment for lawbreakers could sometimes be deadly.
It's not uncommon for gangs to have the KOS order, which is kill on sight, when someone commits a major violation of their bylaws and rules.
Before they broke up, Josh had actually taken Mercedes to a Latin Kings beach party, and one of the gang members allegedly started teasing him about Mercedes being a guy because of her broad shoulders and Adam's apple. Josh told him that she was just going through some hormonal issues. Investigators believe that's what spooked him and made him want to get rid of Mercedes before his gang found out that she was transgender. When investigators confronted Josh with these new findings, he finally decided to admit everything about what really happened. He said that he had been planning the murder for 2 days before picking her up. And at some point while they were driving to Josh's dad's house, Mercedes started feeling uneasy and asked, "Josh, am I being set up?" And although Josh tried to reassure her, she felt that something was wrong, and she was right. As soon as they stopped, Josh quickly pulled out a shotgun and shocked her, and then grabbed the knife and started stabbing her repeatedly.
Said, "Oh God, Josh, please no." She was screaming.
She cried and pleaded with him to spare her life, saying that she wanted to live. At some point, she even tried to get away, but Josh chased her through the woods and hit her in the head with a hammer until she fell out. He then beat her a couple more times to make sure that she was dead.
If there is anything in this world that I could take back, it would be that I would give Mercedes her life back.
And it doesn't end there. When Josh was arrested, he was so haunted by what he had done to Mercedes that he attempted to end his life. Jail workers found him in his cell with a braided bed sheet wrapped around his neck, and a note said that he'd been living a nightmare. In the letter, he apologized to his dad for all the heartache he caused him, and his mom for the hateful and hurtful things he's said to her over the years. He also addressed his fellow Latin King members directly, telling them how Mercedes' death haunted him. "I just can't take this anymore. I see her face and hear her voice. Her spirit is screaming for revenge. I'm living a nightmare. It's like a horror movie. I killed her and now she's not gonna stop until she has killed me. I love all of you. I'm so sorry." To Mercedes' family, he wrote, "I wish I could go back in time. I would have done things differently. I'm sorry for your loss and your pain. Maybe my death will at least bring you some small amount of comfort." Fortunately or unfortunately for him, the jail workers came in before he succeeded in ending his life, forcing him to continue living with the nightmare of what he had done. He later pleaded guilty to the charge of first-degree homicide and was given a life sentence with the possibility of parole, plus 49 years in prison for a hate crime, making him the first person ever to be prosecuted for a transgender hate crime. A hate crime crime is when you commit a crime against someone or someone's property because you are biased against their race, religion, disability, ethnicity, and sexual orientation. This case drew a lot of nationwide attention, including that of Caitlyn Jenner, who mentioned it during her Epsi Awards acceptance speech and used it as an example of what trans people go through every day.
They're getting bullied, they're getting beaten up, they're getting murdered, and they're committing suicide.
What do you guys think about this case? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section.